There we go. All right. Apologies for the lighting.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, all right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us at the beginning with some of their little bit of technical issues. Sorry about that. We should be good to go though now. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are having Natalie C. Parker in conversation with Zoraida Córdova. Here tonight to talk about some of their newest releases, really anything they'd like. The floor is theirs tonight. I'm just here to introduce and digitally host for tonight. Thanks for coming to talk together for the Book Loft and for our viewers tonight.
Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
All right,
Hello.
right, and I will go ahead and
Vanish in the ether.
there you go. And I'll be here and letting you folks know if anyone has any questions for the authors tonight. I'll be sure to pass it along.
Thank you so much. Um, I'm Zoraida Cordova, and I'm the author of The Inheritance of Mercury Divina, a bunch of other books. And I'm here with my one of my besties in the whole world, Natalie C. Parker, to celebrate her latest release, The Assassin's Guide to Babysitting. Natalie, tell us about yourself.
Hi. Okay. So I, like Zoraida said, am the author of The Assassin's Guide to Babysitting. It's my most recent release. I have been writing books for young adults and young readers, middle grade readers, for a decade now. And Assassin's Guide is, I believe it's my ninth novel. I should have counted, but I think it's nine. Um, I write in speculative spaces, everything from gothic horror to futuristic, like post-apocalyptic adventure. And together with Zoraida, I edit and put together a collection of anthologies that are focused on some of our favorite cryptids. Yeah, so that's who I am.
Okay, and so tell us about the Assassin's Guide to Babysitting.
Okay. Okay, so the Assassin's Guide to Babysitting, the quickest pitch that I've ever come up with is John Wick meets the Babysitters Club. So it is set in Kansas City. It is a hidden world, young adult adventure novel about a society where some people are born with talents, and the talents are kind of like superpowers, but there's like a set number of superpowers. So the story is about True, who is born with a talent that her parents tell her to keep secret, that if she exposes it to the world, she will be in danger. Um, and so she spends a lot of her young life learning how to hide this very specific, very special thing about herself. And the story kind of kicks off, I guess actually really kicks off, when she's 12 years old and assassins break into her house, and her parents basically tell her, run, go find this super scary assassin who lives in Kansas City to protect you, and they give their lives in order that she can survive. So she is now, in high school. She's a senior, and she has been in hiding for most of her life. She lives and trains under Kansas City's most feared assassin, and kind of has a dream of one day perhaps getting revenge on her parents. However, she's kind of living her life. And so the story is really about one day when she is out on a babysitting gig, because even deadly assassins need babysitters. Um, she and her best friend are watching this kid. Her best friend ends up leaving for specific purposes, and she's attacked. And so she ends up on the run with this baby and kind of trying to unpack, like, why, what's going on, where are her resources, what can she do to protect this child? And then as the mystery continues to unravel, what might the child have to do with her and with what happened to her and her parents so many years ago. So it's kind of a big mystery wrapped up in some fun, otherworldly thriller adventure
I thought
dressing.
you were going to say it's like a mystery wrapped up in an enigma wrapped up in a burrito. Uh,
I should have
of,
said that actually. Thank
of
you.
greatness. A burrito of greatness. Um,
Burritos of greatness.
how did you find writing like True and Logan's our main characters? Like, how did you find writing their very distinct voices?
Prue is, kind of a very focused, and she's not grumpy, but she's also been hiding a part of herself her entire life. So she's guarded. True felt very familiar to me as a young point of view, that she um, keeps secrets, and some of them feel very dangerous. And she also has a lot of big feelings about things in the world. So in that regard, True was just kind of, I guess, like a very close narrator for me. Logan Dyer, who is her adopted father, the ghoul of Kansas City, the most feared assassin in all of Kansas City, he was so delicious to write because he is that sort of stoic, hardened killer, but he has a lot of depth and a lot of like secrets to his past. There's a reason that he's so guarded. There's a reason that he's the way he is. And when, he's in his, I don't know, late 30s, early 40s, I would have to check the book to find out if I ever named what age he was actually. But he is presented with this child of a woman that he knew when he was a kid. And at first he's like, no, thank you. I am not a part of this. I'm not going to take care of this kid. And then he slowly realizes, oh no, I'm definitely going to take care of this child. And that kind of, the hardened warrior with the heart of gold, the
Oh, yeah.
teddy bear insides, is one of my favorite kinds of characters to read, to watch. And so getting to write one was like a treat to myself.
I love that so much. Oh my God, I had like a question that I hadn't prepared for you that again, once again, fluttered out of my brain like a sexy fairy. But so you've had multiple releases in the last year. There's Come Out, which is a finalist for the Stoker Awards in the young adult category. Congratulations. Um, and you write really you've always and then you had another book. You had so many
Is
books.
it the one that we worked on together?
Yes, fairies never
Oh,
lie.
Zoraida. It's this
What?
one. This one.
Yeah,
Never
fairies
lie.
never lie. Love it. I was right.
You were right.
And
Yes.
so, but in all of this, I think you have a through line of the kind of characters you create. Do you think that you can tell? Because you talk about like your favorite characters to read, or watch. Do you feel like there's a very specific kind of heroine or protagonist that you gravitate toward?
This year in these three books, actually, I think that I was kind of um, drilling down into a couple of questions about what it means to be a queer youth in America, what it means today to be queer. Um, and Come Out is a very hard-hitting, very um, unflinching look at the ways that real harm is and can be done to queer teens, and how there's a lot of horror at the heart of being queer today. I mean, there has always been, but what does it look like today in a society where we, on one level, are very accepting and have created spaces, and on the other level, some of those spaces feel like traps. So, you know, um, the urge to hide versus the urge to come out is like it's a horrifying kind of space to occupy for a lot of young people, even for a lot of adults. So Come Out was like a very hard look at that kind of question, that kind of horror, the horror of everyday life, but also mapping it onto more of a supernatural story. Assassin's Guide, which I was working on at the same time. Actually, I feel like Even though they came out months apart and they're from different publishers, they look kind of like a set, the
They do.
color.
Yeah, the color scheme's really, really great. I thought you were gonna say like they feel very similar, which they don't. Like it still feels like you, but like different genres. Uh, Unlike what happened to me when I was writing a book and another book at the same time, I ended up having like a bunch of characters with the same name.
Oh my gosh. Oh
And
no.
and then I forgot. It was Kiss the Girl and Convergence, and I was like, oh, that's fine.
Oh
Nobody will
no.
notice.
Oh
Um,
no. It's like when you're really like chewing on something in your brain and then
and I'm like, I like that
shows
name.
up.
I haven't used it before, except
Oh
for five
no.
minutes ago.
Except for 5 minutes ago, it shows up repeatedly. Well, Assassin's Guide, because I was working on it, sort of the timelines overlapped with Come Out. I wanted that to feel much more fun. So even though the metaphor that overlays the whole thing, like, oh, somebody's been hiding a thing about themselves their whole life, the thing that she's hiding isn't that she's queer, although she is. Because I wanted to make sure that I gave myself a space inside a story that felt a little safer, that felt a little more fun and like um like the trauma wasn't going to force me to confront big questions about myself or being queer or like the dangers of encountering that in the world, that there was a different kind of story to be told around the experience of queerness, even though the themes are very much aligned. And then some of that carries over into my story in Fairies Never Lie, although it's a short story, so it's a very different kind of
Hmm.
approach. And it's more about like, interpersonal family, um,
Acceptance.
yeah, acceptance and like
Understanding, I also felt reading.
assumptions and all of that. Like it's still there, but it's a different kind of meditation, I guess, on the same theme. But you also had like 10 books come out in the past year.
The past like couple years, yeah. So, this year in the summer of August, summer August 2024,
Summer of
I
August.
had my middle grade, my first Star Wars middle grade, Beware the Nameless came out, and that was very exciting for me because I got to create a character named Churro the Hutt, who is a precious little flower of a hut, if you're familiar with the Star Wars universe, and it it reminded me of what I love about children's stories and writing for kids,
Oh,
and writing a story about how you have to be yourself. Like Churro the Hutt is gets mixed up with some Jedi business. Um, and in this, sorry, I'm reading the comments right now.
wait,
Danielle's,
how do you see comments? I can't see anything.
I'm on my phone.
Oh,
I have it open on my phone. And somebody else said, Chandra said, Come Out was one of the best horror novels I read last year, which is correct. I also feel that way.
thank you.
Um, it's also the first horror novel that made me want to cry. Uh, and I know we're here to talk about Assassin's Guide, but that's just like how good your writing is in general, just so you know. But anyway, so writing about kids who still are trying to find their place in the galaxy or trying to find their identity, I think those topics are evergreen as writers, and I think that that actually brings us into the question of where do your fun ideas come from?
This is maybe my favorite thing to talk about with Assassin's Guide because, like I was saying, writing Come Out was really hard. It's hard. I mean, I always think writing every book is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I do think Come Out will sort of top that list for a long time because it was hard to nail because I wanted to be specific. I wanted to make sure that I was adding to a conversation that has started and is very rich in terms of queer horror in the YA space. There's a growing number of books out there. I feel like the conversation is evolving and it's beautiful. And I have like a long list of recommendations for anybody who wants to get into queer horror and YA spaces. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. But it was really hard. I had to write it 3 times from scratch because the metaphor kept changing and I needed the metaphor to like land. I needed to feel solid and good to me in my heart. So at the same time, I was feeling like I needed something fun in my life to kind of give me a little bit of a reprieve from that experience. Um, so I was thinking about things that I love. What are things that I love? I needed to find joy, just a spark of joy. And I wanted it to feel like a low barrier to entry for me. I didn't want to feel like I had to map out a very meaningful metaphor, something that was going to have to like scrape out of my soul on one level and, very carefully navigate the landscape of harms and traumas and all of that. So I instantly realized, oh, Keanu Reeves, right?
He's a source of inspiration for many and a lot of
Yeah.
my fun dreams. Just,
Oh my God, Zoraida. So I was like, what is one thing in my life that has only ever been joyful? Like, where do I turn? And I turned to Keanu Reeves because um
he's done it all.
he's done it all, but from a very young age, one of the first movies that I remember keying into as a watcher and something that I just really loved was Babes in Toyland. So not very many people have seen this, but it is one of Keanu's early works.
I don't know if I was in this country yet.
I don't think you were actually. Maybe you were just born. And then Speed, which I do think is maybe the most perfect
Yeah,
these.
absolutely.
I feel like very little rises to its level. It is flawless. No, it's not flawless because flawless is boring. It has flaws, but I love it so much, and Keanu's performance is brilliant. So, also like The Matrix, Point Break, like whatever. I can just turn to the oeuvre that is Keanu Reeves. So I was like, okay, this gives me great joy. I can sit down, I can watch a movie, I just feel joy. There's no like angst that accompanies watching these things. So I started trying to figure out, okay, if I take one of these ideas and just kind of like shuffle it with other things in my life that I have loved, what kinds of ideas might spark in different directions? So I made a list of Keanu Reeves movies, and then I made a list of books and other movies that I've loved in my life, like Pride and Prejudice and Labyrinth and The Babysitter's Club and whatnot, and just started mixing and matching. And when I matched John Wick with The Babysitter's Club, it just made me laugh. Like pure joy. Oh my gosh, I can see it. These assassins need babysitters too. And like obviously that's a very shallow level, but
Uh-huh.
it sparked enough that I was like, okay, let's follow this and let's see where it goes. Why don't I set it in Kansas City? Because I live very close to the city and have spent so much time in it. I love Kansas City. It doesn't get a lot of recognition in the like literary sphere. What if I did that and then sort of followed the things I love about Kansas City, merging it with a hidden world, with assassins, with babysitters, and then just kind of, played with that until I had a story.
I love that so much. Um, I also want to point out that Chandra in the chat said, he seems to be happy voicing Shadow the Hedgehog. And you know what? I
Yeah.
actually just watched it on Sunday. I watched Sonic 3 and I cried. It had a great third act. All the beats were there. It was very emotional.
I
Uh,
haven't watched it yet, but I need to because,
it
anything
was so
Keanu
much
Reeves.
fun. My brother and I went to Times Square to like the theater to watch, and we were just like, it's us and like a bunch of 10-year-olds and their parents.
Well, the parents, because we were the ones who played Sonic the Hedgehog back in the day.
Yeah. But I love this idea of like your your ideas being sort of like a combination, a Venn diagram of all of the things that you love. Do you think that that happens all the time for every book? Um, because I get my ideas in a number of different ways. My debut novel, the idea came from I was at Coney Island and it was the summer that I just went to Coney Island every summer, every day, to go in the dirty water.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I saw a very handsome lifeguard, and I was like, what if he's a merman? And then I wrote an entire novel about that. And what if the mermaids return to Coney Island every 50 years, and what happens? And then I'll be watching a movie, or I'll be talking to a friend, and or like, we were in a meeting the other day, and I was like, here's a fully formed idea in my brain. And, like my Athena, uh, cracking open my brain noodles and being like, here's a book, please write it. Um, so how do you harness that for all the others, for everything else?
I wish that I had a good answer because I feel like we could crack a lot of codes. But I I think that as much as I sometimes really want to rush an idea, there's no rushing it. Um, and it will just happen in that Athena way. Like you will just all of a sudden have that moment where your like galaxy brain cracks open and you see things or you pull things into a constellation that weren't previously unrelated. So you look at the world, like the vast history of all of your experiences and all of your loves and all of your hates and all of your like observations about the world, and all of a sudden you look up and you've created a story out of stars. And I think that that is like,
So beautiful.
thank you. But I think that that is like the way that it happens, that you have to continue to live, you have to continue to have big feelings, you have to continue to analyze those feelings. I think that the best, the people that I admire the most,
It's
who
me.
are authors, it's you. Yes, it's you. But they are very introspective and they are very analytical about the world. And that comes from a place of curiosity and also, maybe a desire to find patterns and meaning in the world. And that's what a story is finding pattern and meaning in the world around you when everything is chaos and terror and destruction and the 47th president of the United States. So you have to continue to like find stories and meaning. And that's the way I think it works. Sorry, I didn't mean to like bring us down by mentioning
No,
that.
I was like, let me pour one out for freedom.
I saw it. I saw it.
So God. Um, no, I think that that's really important. I feel like I am, obviously there's all different kinds of books, there's different kinds of stories. I think that there's this like in a time when everybody wants to sort of disassociate and and have, I keep hearing, I just want to escape. And I'm like, I too would love to escape. I want to escape so much, but who gets to escape and where do they get to escape? Right? Because I feel like queer authors, BIPOC authors, when our escapism is not the same place as someone who might never have to think about something political or an agenda or etc. Even when I write Star Wars, I think about like what is the actual story here, right? Like what am I trying to say in this galaxy where the bad guys are very clearly like polarized? And there's little room for gray.
Mhm.
Um, and so it, it's something that I do a lot of deep thinking about whenever I come up with a story, even when a story just erupts from my brain, fully formed, I still have to think about how I'm gonna tell it, right? And so one of my favorite things about being a writer, so much about writing makes us chaotic and sad. And but the best parts are to me is like texting our wolf pack group chat, like, I have this idea. How do I make it a real idea?
Yeah.
Um, and instantly, like we already know like the questions that I sometimes I have like all of your guys' voices in my head, being like, okay, well, this is what somebody would say. And that's really good to have as a writer. It's like having that sounding board and that interior monologue of like, what are my friends gonna say about this specific idea?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah.
I do. I love that too. I love that the longer that I'm in this business and the more like connections that I make, that the better I think I get because I do have so many respected voices that are in my head and people who I want to do better for. You know, I want to do better for anybody who reads my book, but it's really my friends and colleagues that I'm like, no, I want to keep working as hard as they're working, and I want to produce stories that are as meaningful as the stories that they're producing, even if they're also fun, even if they're also, Keanu Reeves.
I, when I told somebody like, oh, somebody was I don't think it was a mentee. I think it was just like somebody who's an aspiring writer who was like, where do you get your ideas from? And I'm like, well, that's really hard because I'm like, I like to just wander around New York or like go to the Met and like
Yeah.
look at the beautiful Greek butts. Uh,
I've seen
in
you do this.
Yeah, you've been there. Like, or go to the movie, read my favorite book, binge watch something while I'm catatonic on my couch. Like ideas are literally everywhere if you're paying attention to the world around you. But if you really, 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 really can't lock into an idea or you get bored, take a bunch of things that are your favorite things, right? Like you said, um, and pull out and write them all on like little pieces of paper, and then like pull out two and see what you get, right? So it could be like the Ninja Turtles meets Jane Austen.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's
Uh,
fun.
I have a question about writing for children.
Oh,
This
okay.
says writing for kids question mark. So I don't really know what we intended,
Wasn't
but
very specific, huh?
it's not very specific. But I think my question would be uh why is writing for children worth like a worthwhile thing to do?
So I have a lot of thoughts about this. Um, my biggest thought is that writing for children, writing smart, like thoughtful um, stories that intersect with questions of justice and social justice and, you know, anything about the world, questions that matter to us as a people. I think that when you are are engaging in storytelling for children, you are igniting big ideas in them. You're inspiring their own inspiration and their own curiosity, and um, making the world bigger instead of smaller. And I think that that is one of the most valuable things that we can do for young people, is to make the world feel bigger. Um, to encourage them to ask questions, to encourage them to find their own truths in whatever direction that takes them. So I think that storytelling in big ways is one of the most valuable things that we can do for children's imaginations. Um, I also think that it's just it's fun and freeing because younger readers, tend to engage in a degree of whimsy that adults more quickly put aside, or adults need more specific answers and are less willing to kind of go in that like surreal direction. I mean, I think about David Lynch, and obviously we're all thinking about David Lynch today, but one of the reasons as a child, I was sneaking out of I was sneaking out of the room to turn on Twin Peaks when I was far too young to watch it. But there was something about the surreal quality of that work that really spoke to me. And it horrified me, but I also was like, whoa, how big is this world? And I didn't need the same kinds of answers that I think a lot of adult viewers might have needed from a David Lynch. experience. But I think about that when I'm writing for kids, that um, you can present story on a different kind of level. You don't have to answer all the questions because the kids are maybe not quite as ready to ask all of those questions, but they are also going to like create worlds around your worlds, which I think is really beautiful and fun. It's fun to write for kids.
Absolutely. I've started to write adult books. I mean, I started to write adult books in 2020, 2014, when I started some romance novels. But I think that, even now, it's been, it's going to be 13 years since my debut novel, the Merman one, came out. And I think that it's still worthwhile to me to write for children, and the children that might feel alone or that might feel left behind, um, in their imagination.
Yeah.
And so I think that, not to just be congratulating both of us, but a little bit, I think that like sometimes um I've met some aspiring authors who say that, oh, they're writing YA because YA is the thing that sells. And I'm like, yeah, but like you should be writing YA because you have something to say for that audience. And I think, oh well, I'm also, you're anything that you write should have something to say. Um whether it's like true love conquers all, or like here's my gay agenda. Not your gay agenda, but you know what I
You
mean.
know, it's the same. Yeah, I mean, and I agree with that. I feel like when I was first
I
starting
support
off
it.
writing in young adult spaces, um, I was writing to very like a different kind of experience, and it took me a while to actually open up about writing a queer narrative because of my own fears, my own insecurities. It's present in my early novels, but it is definitely obscured, and that has a lot to do with, like I said, my own fears, but also some of the responses that I got on a like industry level to earlier drafts. So it's been kind of a journey for me to still write for kids. And now I get to write, or I am going to continue to write. I don't get to write. I'm going to continue to write queer narratives that I think are really important for young readers, like middle grade readers and young adult readers alike.
uh I want to put a pin in this because I have a question that ties to this, but we're gonna take audience questions in the next 2 minutes. So 7:35. We're just gonna I have uh Chandra just left one in the chat. Jen Hubs says, as an aside, would 100% read Ninja Turtles meets Jane Austen. So great.
I'm
Uh,
actually like, it's stirring back here. I'm like, oh no, Zoraida, we have a new collaboration to work on. So
but for now, actually, can we talk about working together as anthologists?
yes, we can. Um, so Zoraida and I, in pre the pre-pandemic, was it right before the pandemic when we decided that we would create a series of anthologies together?
Uh, was it that specific February or the year before that?
Sometime around
I
then.
think it was 2019.
So yeah, I think it was 2019 when we were just kind of like floating in the pool of ideas and trying to like come up with things that we wanted to explore in the future. And Zoraida was like, I miss vampires because it was 2019 and there weren't a whole lot of vampires around at that time. And so that is one of the ways that I think is really indicative of how like ideas are born, because we were just literally floating in a pool, like floating in the pool of the universe and tossing ideas back and forth. And we decided we would do vampires, we would do mermaids, we would do fairies if we could sell them all. And then we did, because amazing. Um, but pulling together an entire team of authors to write around a centralized theme um, was both one incredibly challenging and two incredibly rewarding. So, Zoraida, what is it like to work with me?
Um, I feel like I am a chaotic little Tasmanian devil. I was like, what's that one? The guy. And you somehow, who's the Tasmanian devil's friend? Bugs Bunny?
I don't know. Um, was there something like
I'm
an
sorry. I don't Looney Tunes is not a good comp for
is
this.
not my forte. I have to like Google it. I don't know
Uh,
who the Tasmanian's devil friend. Does anybody have an answer? Somebody can help
well,
us.
okay, fine. I'm just like I feel like we balance each other out in many different ways. I think that like I think we're both very grounded and practical in many ways, but I do think that like sometimes I just go off on like let's do this and this and this and you're like, "Okay, but what can we do actually?" I love your organization skills. I love the way that you ideate. I love the way that you um help me figure out stories and when we so putting an anthology together is like figuring out how to put like a puzzle together in a way that makes sense, but you don't know what the puzzle actually looks like. Um and so with that in mind, I think that like I just think that we make a good team. Like we were complementary in many different ways.
You,
Um
because if I pull you down from big ideas, you sometimes have to pull me up from like you're two in this one space and you need to open up a little bit. And like I think that we are a very good balance and it was necessary for this kind of project because we were wrangling, what is it, like 36 authors over 3 books?
I mean, the first one was only 9
Mhm.
authors
It's
or
10.
8. Well, oh, 10 aside from me and you.
Yeah.
And then the next batch was 14
And then I
and
started was
and
14.
yeah, and then 14 again. And so like I feel like 10 was a good number and then we just sort of like it went wily. And our wonderful illustrator for our pre-order giveaways, Diana Sousa's in the chat and says,
Diana's in the
yeah,
chat.
I love those anthologies, but might be biased. No, you're allowed to love them. It's fine.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
So, okay, great. So I do have a question for us, but let me get to some of the questions that have been asked in the chat. And one of them is actually something that I did have for you, which is, would Natalie write for adults like many YA authors have done?
I would write for adults. I am sort of waiting to figure out which of my ideas feels like the best debut into the adult space. Obviously, I think anybody who's familiar with my books knows that I like a mystery. I like kind of the thriller vibes. Um, so I imagine if I take a step into the adult spaces, it would be either in sort of a thriller direction or horror because horror is just one of those things that I both enjoy as a consumer, but also just really find fascinating on a like intellectual and even academic level. I really love horror. So if I can figure out exactly what I have to say in the adult space, it would probably be a horror.
Excellent. And I want that for you as soon as, I mean, you're already writing like 17 million things, but if you
Mhm.
can find an extra hour per week, you can
Yeah,
chip it
easy. 1 week, that's all I need.
a week. It's like an entire book in a week.
Yeah, easy.
Um, Start thinking about the upcoming 2025 titles we're excited about. We'll do that a little bit towards in the next couple minutes. But Danielle Clayton asks, what kind of talent would you have from your world, Natalie?
So the thing about the talents in the Assassin's Guide world is that like you really don't get to they're not like associated with personality. They're not like linked to the kind of person that you are. You're just sort of born into it. It's like a genetic trait.
Like
So more
an X,
fun. Like what?
like an X-Men.
Like an X-Men. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like the metaphor is really there for the taking. If you want to like lean into the metaphor of what True is hiding, this she got the talent that everybody thinks you should hide. So, if you want to lean into it, it's there. However, it shouldn't take you to a specific trauma place. Um, I know the one that I would want, and that is to be a wingtip, like Logan Dyer, who, as we might have said already, I find very fantastic. But the wingtips are excessively agile and swift. Like they can move, faster than you can really see. So everything is grounded in our world. It's like they have cell phones, they go to school, they drive cars, but the talents sort of exist. It's an overlay on top of all of that. So there are bullseyes who have pretty perfect aim. They can always hit their target. There are strong arms who are very strong. The wingtips, as I said, are very agile and graceful and swift. And then there are bombshells who are a little bit like a berserk warrior, and they can actually become unstable and explode. And then the fifth, yeah, just like you, the fifth talent is the one that True is, and it's not very much of a spoiler because it's like very overt from the opening chapters. True is a bastion, and she's the one that everybody thinks, these talents are the most dangerous, and if they ever assert themselves, we'll all be in danger. So if anybody is a bastion, we need to like lock them away for the rest of their lives, if not kill them. Problem is they're pretty untouchable. So bastions are like impermeable. They you can't stab them. Their skin is kind of tough and resistant to everything like blades and bullets. They're pretty impossible to kill. They do have one weakness, but I won't tell you. You'll have to read the book to find out. But that's a bastion. So I think I would want to be a wingtip because I like being fast and graceful.
I want to be the chaos one.
You want to be the bombshell?
Yeah.
You can be the bombshell. I think that you essentially are already, actually.
There we go. So if the shoe fits. Let's see. Danielle also wants to be a bombshell, and then she says, "Oh, or a bullseye."
Yeah, the
Uh,
bullseyes are they're pretty great. I mean, they're all great.
okay. Serious question. What would you tell your younger self?
Well, you even prepared me for this one, and I didn't prepare an answer. I would probably say too many things because I like to talk. But I mean, can you be a little more specific? Like, what would I tell myself about eating too many Starbursts at Halloween? Or what would I tell myself about, where life's going to take you?
I feel like you can, okay. What would you tell your younger writer self?
Oh, I think that I would, okay, if my younger writer self who was getting into the industry, who wanted to publish,
Okay,
sorry, I need a finer point.
that's fine.
I think that I would tell them uh to to oh no, this is too fine a point. Hang on.
You want me to go?
Yeah, you go.
I would tell my younger writer self to take her time.
Mhm.
I think that when I was 13 and I started writing, I was like, oh, I discovered writing. I was like, I want to be a writer. And then when I was 17 and I did like a writing program, I was like, I'm ready to be published. And then when I got my first book deal in 2012, 2011, I was like, I'm ready. And I think that like I could have waited another year or two. Because I was in such a rush to get published that I like took the first deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy I did because in retrospect, like it led to the books that I wrote, the friends that I have. Um, but I do think that like you always need to remind yourself like to slow down so you don't like crash and burn. Um, and I would also tell my younger self, my younger writer self, to write the crazy, weird ideas in her head as opposed to talking herself out of it because eventually somebody else is just going to write it because of big magic.
Like, I mean, I think that I would say to my younger self that I would try to convince myself not to hold back on the kinds of stories that I wanted to tell, that I didn't need to weed things out.
Like you didn't
Um,
need to weed out your identity. Same.
mhm. Think I would try to, and I'm still not, I'm not sure that that would have been successful, but I think I would have tried.
You would have been a pioneer. You are a
Mhm.
pioneer in my heart.
Thanks.
Um, I have one we have a question I think you can see in our chat in the Zoom about what we're excited for in 2025. Um, but I want to save that for last. So is there so if there are any other questions, you guys should pipe up now.
Hype up now, she says. Hype up. Um,
Are you trying to go on YouTube to see the chat?
I can't, I don't know how to do that. I was
You
trying
can't,
to
it's
remind
fine. Don't do
myself
it.
what is coming out in 2025 because I'm I'm terrible at keeping those lists.
Can you say what you're working on now, what you're working on next?
Yes, I can, I think.
Because one of them is related to the book that we're talking about today.
Yes. Okay, so for me, coming up next, I am actually working on, right as we speak, it is right here behind this window, so you can't see it. But I'm working on the sequel to The Assassin's Guide to Babysitting, which does stand on its own. So the sequel came about after the whole book was complete. It's meant to stand on its own. And I was just like utterly delighted to be asked to write a sequel set in the same world. So that is called The Assassin's Guide to Dating, and that will come out in 2026. I'm really, really excited for it. So that is one thing. And then the other thing that I'm also currently working on is a co-authored book with Julie Murphy called uh, Making a Splash. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. Making a Splash, and it is a sort of like The Little Mermaid meets High School Musical. It's like a small town that puts on a happily ever after fest every year, and they put on a play every year. And this year it's The Little Mermaid. So there are a couple of points of view of who's playing Ariel and who's playing Ursula, and there's shenanigans and hijinks and all kinds of stuff. So those are two things that I'm working on that I'm really, really excited about. What about you, Zoraida?
I'm working on my next adult novel called The Fall of Rebel Angels, which is about a fallen angel from Lucifer's army searching for redemption and a woman accused of murder also searching for to clear her name and redemption. And they fall in love or they try or they try to.
I cannot wait for this book.
And so actually here's my murder board.
Oh, it's grown since I saw it last.
She said.
Oh, okay.
So this is a children's book event. So that's my next novel. I have a Star Wars comic book out next week. It's the Star Wars Annual, which features a lot of different authors in the High Republic. And I get to write about Churro the Hutt, and a little adventure that he gets to have in space. Um, yeah, that's my murder board.
I love it.
But I'm working on that and then a bunch of speculative like stuff that will hopefully go out on submission. So just trying to keep busy this year for sure. To keep writing, keep coming up with ideas, keep like having ideas grow fully formed out of our brains. Danielle asked a question which she should have asked earlier because it's but is what is the hardest part of building your worlds, building our worlds?
Danielle, she's not even on screen. You're roasting her. Okay. What is the hardest part about building worlds? So, I mean, it really depends on, for me, how close it is to a contemporary world. And then my strategies for building the world really change. Like, if it is something set in the contemporary world, like Come Out, or Assassin's Guide, then I think the hardest part is because I'm always trying to make it feel like it is grounded in a locale. And so I usually pick a place that I have lived before or that I have some kind of grounded experience in. Come Out is set in a fictional town on the Olympic Peninsula in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State because I lived on the Olympic Peninsula for several years. And so I created a town called Port Promise and then sort of, you know, built around the history that I knew of that region and then the history that I researched of that region. For Assassin's Guide, it's set in Kansas City, and I like played with a lot of the specificity of Kansas City and took a lot of liberties. So Kansas City has a history with the mob. And also there are these tunnels that run beneath like Union Station and they go underneath downtown Kansas City. Not a lot of people know about them. I used those and really built on them as well. So I think for me, it's hard, but it's also the fun part because I get to research and figure out like how and why cities were built the way that they were built, or how and why, this peninsula in Washington is developed the way it's developed. Like what were the what was the industry, and like when did which groups of like which demographics, when did they migrate to this area? And so what is the mix? So I enjoy that part of developing worlds when they're related to our world because I get to learn as well. When I'm in a fantasy setting, all of that changes because then you're really building from like a molten core up,
Yeah.
which
I
is
mean,
harder and funner, or
yeah,
maybe a different kind of fun, but
I think I as big as some of the worlds I've written are like the Brooklyn Bruja series, which, spans a lot of original religious mythology, and Incendiary, which is inspired by 15th century Spain. And like, all the my Santa romance, The Heart of Winter by Zoe Castile. Like I created entire worlds. And so usually as big as some of the worlds are, I still start with character. And I have like a fully formed character. And then I just like if we're imagining that there's a camera on this character and they're standing in like their town and you just sort of zoom out. And so like what do you keep seeing, right? Like stores, a high street, a valley, a camp, a bomb shelter. Like, what do you see as you keep zooming out in this world and what's necessary? And then all of the research, because usually I pull from existing analogs because I don't really think that you can truly make something up. Like imagery comes from somewhere. And so like what is that imagery? What am I supposed to imagine? What is it supposed to look like? And so that's generally how I work
I
through that.
I, Tess Grattan, my wife, is a lot like this, where she starts with character and builds sort of a world as the character would experience, or like what does the character need to know, or what can the character feasibly know, and then sort of building around that. And I always start with concept, and so I come at it from a different angle too. And I find it fascinating because I think that a lot of writers fall into those two sides of like how do you approach it is like you're either character focused or you're sort of concept story focused, and then you have to approach everything from a very specific angle and build the other thing.
Absolutely. So, last question is what's coming? What are you excited about from 2025? What books?
You really prepared me for this question, and I'm still unprepared. So, I mean, obviously, Tessa Gratton has an adult epic fantasy coming out called The Mercy Makers, which
Is on
I'm
both our lists.
on both of our lists. Everything else has like immediately fled from my brain. Can you fill it in for me? What am I missing?
Danielle has the third book in her middle grade series.
That's right. Okay.
The series The Marvelers. Um, I'm super excited about, and that's kids. In adult romance, there's a book called When Javi Met Mari, and it's sort of like Best Friends to Lovers, by Mia Sosa, which I'm so excited about. I feel like all of my adult romance peoples have books out this year, so it's pretty exciting
I
all
know
around.
that Trang Ton Tran has another horror
Yes,
coming out, and
they have
I
another
can picture the
horror.
cover, but I'm always excited for anything that they're putting out. And then I think Kate Alice Marshall also has one coming out probably next week. The Killing Cold, maybe. And I'm excited for that because I will auto buy anything that Kate Marshall writes.
I'm also excited of the third book in the Legendborn cycle, Oathbound by
Mm.
Tracy Deonn. I love that series so much. Um, and I can't wait because like the first book had such an incredible twist, and the second book was just fabulous, and I can't wait for whatever holds for us in book three.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And then I'm
um,
sure I'm forgetting things. I keep telling myself, make a list of the 2025, you
make a
know,
list. Make a list.
but I don't always
I
because
mean, there's hundred. I feel like every year there are hundreds and hundreds of books that are coming out in 2025 and like in the next year. Um, and
yeah.
so oh, I'm actually also very excited about If We Were a Movie by Zakiya Jamal.
Oh yeah, that
That
one.
one's gonna be
That's beautiful.
really, really cute. Really cute. Um, there's Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens, uh, which is also gonna be good. There's just so much. Um,
I know that's the thing. We are sort of drowning in like an abundance of riches at this point when it comes to new.
I was looking at a Goodreads list of books coming out this year in YA alone, and there's like 400 of them. And
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I don't know more than half of them. Like,
Uh-huh.
I just, because there's so many. Um, but
Let's see. Recommended Reading comes out at the end of this month. That's by Paul Caccia, and I'm excited for that one. Another queer romance. Yeah, now we're both just like scrolling through lists trying to figure out what have we missed.
no, I looked at that Goodreads list earlier today and I was like, this is a lot. This is too much.
It's kind of hard to track at this point, but there are so many things coming out to be excited about. That's
Wait,
for
Ryan's book comes out this year or next year? New Ryan Losada.
Ryan.
Yeah.
I
I'm pretty sure Ryan's next book is, sorry, it's in the chat. I might be wrong, but I thought that Ryan's book came out in 2026 because we talked about not having a new book out in 2025. But anyway, so there's just like an embarrassment of riches. Um, and then we're just gonna get to writing. So you and I have a lot of work to do.
we do
Maybe we'll
always.
collaborate again on something.
We will. I'm sure that we will. I see Chandra's question about what volume of Spy Times Family am I on? And I don't make very quick progress on those because I'm reading them in Japanese. So I'm like using them to study Japanese. So I'm only on volume 2. So No spoilers, please.
No spoilies. Okay,
It takes
great.
me a long time to translate and read.
Well, okay. I love this for you. I think we're out of time, but I could just keep talking to you forever as I do when I cold call you and make you stay on the phone with me for hours and hours while I'm cooking. Um, but I love you so much. Congratulations on your new book and your
Thank
nomination. And I hope everybody picks up Babysitter's Guide,
you.
Assassin's Guide,
I love Babysitter's Guide.
Assassin's Guide to Babysitting. Hello, Nick.
Hello
Hello.
again. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. We had a really great time, really lively chat, really great to see, and a lot of engagement. I really enjoyed listening to you both and hearing your opinions on things, and I'm really excited to see what you guys have got next coming up in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having us tonight. This is awesome.
Of course, thank you. And I will see you folks next time. Thank you all for watching tonight. And you can buy both of their titles at bookloft.com. We also offer shipping as well. You folks have a great
Yeah.
night.
I think
Yeah.
I'll be sending some book plates to
Okay,
Loft as well. So,
great,
uh,
yeah. And
fine.
stay tuned as well. We will have signed editions coming up soon.
Nice.
All right. Have a great night, guys.
All right, you
Good night.
too.